Hey everybody, my name is Paul Eston Jr., aka Boy Green. Welcome to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/BoyGreen25. And today is a special day. It's the start of a brand new series here on my YouTube channel called Mock Draft Mondays. And every Monday from this Monday all the way through the NFL draft, a couple months from now, we'll have a different NFL draft guest on our show, and we'll be talking about the latest Jets draft nuggets. And there's a variety of little milestones along the way, Senior Bowl, Combine, pro days, all kinds of things. So we're going to be breaking it down every single week. And of course, at the end of each conversation, we will task whatever draft analyst we have on the show to give his mock draft for all things New York Jets. With that being said, let's waste no more time. Let's bring on our first guest to kick off this brand new series here on January 10th. His name is Ryan Roberts. He's an NFL draft analyst for RiseandDraft.com. And guess what? You can follow him on Twitter at Rise and Draft, sitting very suiting for that and fitting. Let's bring him in. Ryan, how are you, man?
I'm good, Paul. I'm good. I appreciate you having me on, man. How's everything on your end?
And not bad, not too shabby. You know, the record rather for the Jets stunk this year, but it's our time of year for Jet fans. We rally because it's draft picks, it's free agency, it's hope. You know that the 4-13 record now with the new 17-game schedule. We'll wipe that off the board because we're all undefeated now. For us non-playoff teams, we're all 0-0. So there's hope in the air that we can turn this around. And Ryan, I've got a lot of topics that Jet fans wanted to talk about on this very first episode, but I want to start in a general sense here as we look to the 2022 NFL Draft. And this general question is, what seems to be the strength of this class?
Defensively, it's a fantastic draft just overall. I would say the defensive end edge group is historically deep because people are going to talk about the Kayvon Thibodeau's of the world out of Oregon, the Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan, the George Karlaftis out of Purdue. But, I mean, you move down, you got guys like Cameron Thomas out of San Diego State, Myjai Sanders out of Cincinnati, Isaiah Thomas out of Oklahoma. There's a lot of depth to that class. A fantastic corner room as well, which I know is another Jets need, potentially opposite of Bryce Hall. So definitely going to potentially have a pick there, I think, with the first selection. Derek Stingley out of LSU obviously has been the hot name for a couple years. Andrew Booth Jr. out of Clemson. I think it's a good safety room as well. I mean, honestly, it's a good defensive draft in general. It's not the best interior defensive line class over the last couple years, but it's definitely solid enough, at least at the top. And then the defense, I think, it just in general is a big strength. Offensive tackle solid. Tight end deep room is very deep, which is also, I think, a general need for the New York Jets, and wide receiver room is deep. So it's a good draft overall. I think I think some people have it a little cloudy in their direction because they just look at the quarterbacks, obviously, which is the most important position on the field. And it's not the greatest quarterback class of all time. But I think generally speaking, 2022 is a very deep and good draft at a multitude of spots.
All right, let's go to that thing you just mentioned off the top, because Jet fans, a lot of them were battling some demons this season. And some of those demons were, well, we want to win football games because, quite frankly, who doesn't? But at the same time, well, if we win football games, as soon as they were outside the playoffs, they were like, then we're getting away from some of those players you just mentioned off the top, which puts them in a very unique scenario. So now they sit at 4-10. The picks are locked in. The regular season is over. The playoffs are now going to start in the coming weekend. So the Jets know where they're at. Again, 4-10 respectively in the first round. So I have to ask the question, maybe things can change and, you know, there's risers and fallers in the draft process. But is there any possibility, Ryan, putting you here on the spot, that one Aiden Hutchinson of Michigan or Kayvon Thibodeau of Oregon could somehow, some way, possibly stumble and tumble down the board potentially for the Jets there at 4?
I think it's possible. I think there's a chance to it because, I mean, I'm looking at just obviously at the top, right? I mean, we assuming Jacksonville at the top. I think everyone's just kind of penciling them into one of the defensive ends, which could happen, but they've also spent 2 out of the last 3 first-round picks on edge defenders. So the real position they need is offensive tackle, right? Like, are they going to sit there and take Evan Neal? Are they going to trade back? And if they are trading back, someone's probably trading up, although it's not a very popular opinion. Someone might reach for a quarterback. It's always possible. I don't think that there's a guy that's worthy of that first overall selection. But the point being is, if an Evan Neal goes in that top 4, and if a quarterback, potentially a trade up, goes somewhere in that top 4, I think it's possible. And I think I don't know. I don't know if I would say it's 100% likely, but I do think that there is a chance, probably more Aiden Hutchinson than Kayvon Thibodeau might reach that fourth pick. I think there's definitely a chance for it.
So you're saying there's a chance. That's
I'm
all Jet
saying
fans
there's a
need to
chance.
hear
That's
on
it.
again on January 10th. Again, obviously things happen all the time, and the example I'll bring up, while it didn't end up working well for the Jets, obviously, but Sam Darnold in that draft class, we all talk about no chance. Let's not even waste our time, Jet fans, when they launched up from 6-3 in March. To be in a position to take one of the quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, and all these other guys, Baker Mayfield, and all these other guys are on the board. We said, no way. Then morning of the draft, they're like, Baker Mayfield's going number one. I'm like, no way. Not going to happen. Number two. And I'm like, okay, number two. I know the Giants said they've loved Saquon this entire time, but they're going to go Darnold, obviously. And then when they didn't, I'm looking at people in the room. I was watching it with some. I'm like, oh my God, the Jets are going to get Darnold. No way. It can't. And then they read it, and I burst in excitement. Of course, it was all for naught because they ended up trading him a few years later. So we find ourselves in the same position over and over again. But it's interesting. Let's bring up the quarterback. So there's a chance for that. I like it. That's good to hear. But what about, so you just mentioned it there with the quarterback, which is interesting. Now, people have said this quarterback class is not great. I've heard some people compare it to the EJ Manuel class, a Christian Ponder class, and that's pretty disgusting. But I'll say as a Jets fan who they believe, Jet fans, Jets people believe they've got their guy in Zach Wilson. So obviously they won't be looking for a quarterback, but they would love to see quarterbacks go in front of them. That means better players are slipping to them respectively at 4 and 10. Is there a chance that someone rises? If so, who? And just in general, how do you feel about, specifically in the first round, the quarterback conversation at this point on January 10th?
Well, I think that one person that I think nobody's really talking about as a potential top 5 pick, but I think it could happen, but the medicals are going to be a big part of the conversation. I think Carson Strong from Nevada has the ability, and I think he has the potential to rise because he is, although he was only a redshirt junior, he graduated in time to go down to the Senior Bowl. And I think that the Senior Bowl is going to tell us a lot about what the order of this class is, because we're going to have Malik Willis down there. We're going to have Kenny Pickett. I have been told that the NFL is as high as on Kenny Pickett as the media kind of portrays it at this point. So I wouldn't be shocked if he goes top 10 to top 15 just overall. Can he rise to number 1 overall pick or a top 5 pick? I'm not 100% sold on that, but so long story short for your answer, I think Carson Strong is the name to really watch in the conversation. And then people are going to throw out Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral. Now, Matt Corral is not set. I don't know if he's Senior Bowl eligible or not, but he's not set. And then he also had an injury in the last game of the season, so I don't even know if he'd be able to play. So those are a couple of the quarterbacks that I think could crash the party. Outside of that, I'm not buying into Sam Howell being that rise, or I'm not buying into a couple other guys, but I think all you need is one of those guys to really impress down in Mobile to take that ascension. And it seems like it happens almost every year. I mean, Carson Wentz went to the Senior Bowl, and he was viewed as an early second round type of prospect that can kind of be urged along. And then he rose to the number 2 player in the draft. It happens pretty substantially. I mean, you mentioned EJ Manuel. EJ Manuel was a day 3 player that went 15th overall. So people are they're going to stretch, man, and they are going to move up for their guys, and they are going to panic. And I mean, when we're looking at the draft order just kind of in front of me,
sure,
are the Lions sold on quarterback in their spot? I don't know if they are. I mean, obviously the Jaguars, I assume, wouldn't be in there. I believe the Houston Texans are probably going to sit on Davis Mills for a year and see kind of what they have there. But you could sell me on the Giants potentially being in the conversation at 5. You could sell me on the Carolina Panthers being at 6. And then the Giants have the 7th overall pick as well. So, are they going to move up? The Atlanta Falcons get aggressive if they really like a guy, being that they have Matt Ryan very on the tail end of their – I think that it's possible. And I think that I think that I will be – I'm kind of optimistic. Well, I don't know if optimistic is the right word. I do believe that someone is going to risk it, and they're going to swing for a quarterback because we see it every single year.
Phenomenal. That's what we love to hear. And I love that term, crash the party. I love that. Love that combination of words, sir. That's excellent. Again, everybody, we are live right here on a Mock Draft Monday on my YouTube channel. Stop what you're doing right now. If you haven't done this already, hit the thumbs up on this video. Makes a tremendous difference. And hit that subscribe button. If you don't want to miss great people like Ryan Roberts, hit that little bell notification. You'll never miss an episode of Mock Draft Monday here on youtube.com/BoyGreeju5. Now, Ryan, forgive me, this may be a stupid question, and quite frankly, a lot of them I ask on the show will probably fall into that category. But with that being said, should this be a thought? Okay, so let's say that it goes chalky at the top. Again, the Jets sit at 4. You got 3 teams ahead of you. Let's say it goes to 2 edge guys. Aiden Hutchinson, Thibodeau, they're gone. Evan Neal, let's say he goes. Jaguars want to protect Trevor Lawrence, maybe. And then the Jets are sitting there at 4. And this is the doomsday scenario as we've labeled it here in early January. Again, there's a long way to go. But should the Jets hesitate? Because a lot of people say they need edge rusher. And a lot of people then connect them to George Karlaftis out of Purdue. And he's very tasty. But the thing I just want to raise, and tell me again if this is a stupid thing, is okay, so if the Jets take Karlaftis, they got, in theory, the third best edge player on the board when they could have had, who knows, a cornerback number 1 could have had their pick. Wide receiver could have had their pick. And again, you could go in a lot of different directions. Any position basically outside of edge rush and offensive line, in theory, they would have dibs on. They could start their run and have the first one on the board. Should there be any hesitation from the Jets or even Jet fans to potentially get what would be the third best player at a position when you have the number 4 overall pick? Again, I don't know if that makes any sense, but or if that's a stupid question.
No, it makes complete sense. I would say in a vacuum, George Karlaftis is worthy of that selection. I actually prefer Karlaftis to Aiden Hutchinson. So like, just put that out there. Okay. I love the guy, man. Like, I think he's just a more I think he's a more true outside track winner. I think that he has very powerful hands. In Michigan, when you're playing on the other side of, although he wasn't a starter beginning of the year, David Ajabo, right? Like, Aiden Hutchinson, even though people perceived it to be like, oh, he's getting double and triple teamed every play, it's not true because there's other dudes on that Michigan defense that you have to account for. Purdue, on the other hand, every single week, number 5's the guy. That's why, for me, the production is not as high as obviously like an Aiden Hutchinson. But like when you look at the hurries, the pressures, the quarterback hits, the ability to play in the run game, like everything is stellar with a George Karlaftis. So to answer that part of the equation, I think in a vacuum, I think he's worthy of that selection. But I would say if I was the Jets, I think that my journey or my quest here would be to get the best player I perceive to be on the board. So although defensive end is the super important position, I feel like even though it might not be as big a need as either defensive end or a corner opposite of Bryce Hall, I think that maybe Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame, who was sitting there at safety because he's a difference maker. And I know that Jets are probably still, kind of scorned by the Jamal Adams saga and kind of where that took you, taking him in the top 5. And I know that Kyle Hamilton would be in this scenario. I believe Jamal Adams went 5th or 6th, and 6th overall. So he would be the highest drafted safety, of course, since Jamal Adams. And I know Jets fans that probably wouldn't sit too well with him, but he's a completely different football player. The versatility that he gives you in coverage is different. 6'4", 220. This type of athlete, this type of length doesn't come around very often. For people that love comps, like the only people you can comp this guy to are guys like Steve Atwater and Kenny Easley, who used to play with the Seahawks, because these types of athletes at that size just don't come around very often. So I would say draft the best player. But if the Jets did decide to draft George Karlaftis, I do think he's worthy of that selection, but I also don't think he's the best player on the board, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very much so. No, it's good to hear because, like I said, that's where we get into, and it's going to happen for everyone, need versus BPA. Because a lot of people, they make the mistake of saying, I need a quarterback. We'll just use it as an example. I need a quarterback. I don't care who has been taken before. We need one. And that's where people get overdrafted and all kinds of things happen in the draft, as opposed to, again, best player available. Maybe a guy slips and the Jets are like, well, this wasn't an immediate need, but wow, we had no idea this guy was going to be here. We got to take him. So that seems to be that kind of conversation that would be there for teams. But fortunately for the Jets, they have a million needs. So really anyone who falls there should somehow be a square peg in a square hole, I would imagine, from that perspective. But let's get into that, Ryan, because I can already say, and this is the first day really of the new year, for Jet fans as they look into 2022, that to me is going to be the most polarizing topic of every draft conversation for the Jets is the Kyle Hamilton thing, because there are going to be fans, and I've already seen them all over social media. They have quite frankly, they have scars, and they go to meetings every Wednesday night saying, this was Jamal Adams, 6th overall. They'll be like, I still have this mark on me from a safety. I can't take a safety again. When even the word safety is brought up, they cower like, no, not again. It didn't work. And the real part of the conversation I want to get to here with you, Ryan, because I imagine every week I want to talk about all kinds of topics with our different draft guests, but this is what I imagine maybe on the show every week. So let's kick it off here, because when Jamal Adams was drafted, and and you say they're different players, and I can't wait to hear more about that because I'm very intrigued by it. But when a safety was drafted, right, by the Jets, they said game changer, locker room guy, all this. We're like, oh, great, phenomenal. And then he's great. And all of a sudden, when the Jets are thinking about, oh, now we're going to have to pay the guy, the conversation shifted. Well, can we pay that much for a safety? And I paused time for a second and say, okay, if you're having that conversation, did you not think the pick was going to work out? Like, what happened there? That's where I get lost, because if you're like, oh boy, should we pay that much? If you're thinking about that, then maybe you shouldn't have drafted a safety with the 6th overall pick. But anywho, so that's the point here that I'm trying to get to and so they end up trading him away for a blockbuster deal. We all know how, unfortunately, that ended up working out for the Jets. And now, as we head into 2022, there may not be a starting caliber safety right now in the Jets roster. So safety is clearly a need. How is Kyle Hamilton different? And then also with the value of safety in general, try to sell Jet fans right now on taking Kyle Hamilton and why that actually would be a good selection.
Well, because I think for when you're talking about a guy like Jamal Adams, where does he do his best work? Like, he could do some stuff in short zone. He can rob some underneath coverage. And, of course, he is great in the box as a tackler. And, I mean, it's been kind of a parody of sorts, right? Like, he's playing basically edge for a large portion of his snaps nowadays. I think that the impact that he has would have been a lot different 10 to 15 years ago, when that box safety, that traditional guy that's there to first and foremost stop the run, would have been a much higher selling point. For a guy like Kyle Hamilton, he can do all of the things that I just mentioned, because he is 6'4", 220, with physicality, with explosion in his lower half. He can do all the things that Jamal Adams can do. And he can sure as hell rob short zones. Like, that's no problem at all, because he has that insane length, a completely different body type than a guy like a Jamal Adams. But the difference is that he is such a good athlete. Notre Dame at 6'4", 220, who's a good defense, by the way, top 10 nationally college football wise this year. They decided, we're going to put you for the majority of reps at single high free safety, because you are the best athlete on the field at all times. And if you go back, watch the Florida State game, he had a couple interceptions. The one that he had where he's on the opposite hash and he works all the way across field after the corner was about to give up a big play and just toe tap interception down the sideline. Jamal Adams can't do that. That is special. We're not talking about a really good football player who Jamal Adams was at his peak. We are potentially talking about the best safety in the NFL, and a guy that can work anywhere from single high, two high, in the box, man-to-man in the slot. He can do anything on your defense. You can literally just label him as a playmaker on the defensive front. I don't care if you label him as a free safety, strong safety, second-level defender, slot. It doesn't matter. This guy, for me, is the only, well, maybe not only, but he is, I'm going to say only. I'm going to stick with only. He is the only blue chip prospect, in my opinion, in this class. A guy that is, and I hate the word generational, because people throw that word out way too easily in the draft world, but this kid is generational, in my opinion. He is the best safety I've ever evaluated, bar none. And I have to look through my grades, because he might be the highest grade I've ever given out just in general, at any position, not taking positional value into account. So this kid, for me, face of a franchise, best safety in the NFL within 3 or 4 years. And I think that he's a guy that is going to change the direction of a defense with what he can do on the back ends.
Sweet Caroline, I asked you to sell me on him. Sold me on him, you did. I'm ready to buy my Kyle Hamilton Jets jersey. Good Lord. I mean, great stuff there. Again, Ryan Roberts at Rise and Draft. He's an NFL draft analyst for riseanddraft.com, joining us here for our first Mock Draft Monday. Again, another reminder, we'll be having these Mock Draft Monday episodes this Monday all the way through the NFL draft. So we're going to be talking to so many great names. And I just like Ryan, from a variety of big-time platforms, it's going to be a lot of fun to have these conversations. So, okay, all right, that's another one. Let's go to another polarizing guy, Tyler Lindenbaum out of Iowa. So there are some Jet fans who are like, hog mollies, baby. I would akin this to last year, Elijah Vera Tucker. I was one that was on the Elijah Vera Tucker bandwagon. Jets straight up, do what you got to do to get him. They get him, and he's been fantastic this year. He's been a lot of fun. Now fans are once again rallying the troops, saying, "Hey, let's get Linderbaum. He could be great for the Jets at center." Now, Connor McGovern, the starting center for the Jets right now, who got injured unfortunately in Week 17, so we'll have to keep an eye out for that. He actually had a very solid season, but a lot of people are looking for an upgrade, a young center that can grow and develop with Zach Wilson and be that kind of guy. Are you an advocate of taking Tyler Lindenbaum, and where, quite frankly? Because some people are, again, it's kind of split right now. That's why it's polarizing. Is half the Jet fans say you can't take a center in the top 10. You got like a million needs. Doesn't make any sense. If you trade back, some fans would be open to it, and others are like, man, just take the guy that you know can be an impact and be a good player for a long time. Where do you stand in the Linderbaum debate?
Well, he's a top 15 to 20 player in this class. I would say that I was more on the second train of thought, where I do think 10's a little high. I do. Yeah. I think that he's a really good player. And I know that obviously the New York Jets, with their San Francisco ties, outside zone is kind of a heavy staple in the offense. And when we're talking about the outside zone, there's no better center probably that come out in the last few years than Tyler Linderbaum. He is a really athletic, tough kid out of Iowa. Obviously, he started there as a defensive lineman and made the transition over to center. And he has that quick twitch. He has that lateral mobility. He has that explosiveness. So for the Jets, a top 20 selection on him, I'd be completely fine with, because I think that he does fit the scheme perfectly. But I think that he's more of a, hey, let's get best player at 4, trade back at 10, get an additional maybe second round pick or a future one, depending on like what the kind of situation is trending there. And then you take him probably mid-teens back to the 20s. So I think he will be there, because I do think he's a scheme-dependent center. But I think in that scheme, he could be special potentially.
All right, let's talk about tight end. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be blunt with you, Ryan. This is one of the worst tight end groups I think I've ever seen in my life, in terms of the Jets, not the draft.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I see you going, what in God's green earth are you talking about? No, whoa. You're the draft guy. I'm just some Jets guy that I really love the draft. But no, for the Jets, I mean, Ryan Griffin, Daniel Brown, Trayvon Wesco. I mean, these names just don't move the needle, Ryan. And Jet fans are begging the gods. Quite frankly, they begged the gods last year, and they got Tyler Kroft. So it's like asking for Christmas for a cool new bike, and you get a piece of coal, and you're like, well, I guess it's better than nothing. But here we go. And Kroft was an injured mess this year. So Jet fans want a tight end. How good is this class? Who are tight ends they can target? The Jets have 4 picks in the top 38, 2 picks in the top 10, and then 2 very nice picks at the top of the second round, which to me are basically first rounders. Those are my favorite picks just in general in all drafts, let alone the Jets actually having a pair of them themselves. So give me the deets on the tight end class. And then, like I said, we'll end this Mock Draft Monday interview with you providing your mock draft for Jet fans so they can, wet the whistle and get all excited and whatnot. But let's start with tight ends. Are there guys? Is this a good class? And who are the names you like?
So it is a very deep class. When we're talking day 2, day 3, it's exceptional. It's not a first round tight end class, though. I don't see any guy that I would be comfortable, especially taking number 10 overall. Like, that's absolutely out of the conversation. But at that pick, I think you said 38 was the selection, right? It was in the second round. I think there's one player specifically that if I was the Jets, I would absolutely jump on if he's there, and that's Trey McBride out of Colorado State. He's going to be down at the Senior Bowl. He's been a guy that I've really liked over the last couple of years, and he took his game to a whole other level this season. He is, for Philadelphia fans, I don't know why they'd be listening to your channel, but like for Philadelphia Eagles fans that remember Brent Selleck when he was with the Eagles, people kind of remember him toward the latter part of his career when Zach Ertz was kind of taking the mantle as the top guy. But Brent Selleck was a really damn good football player, 900-plus yard receiving tight end on top of being a really good blocker. And I feel like that's what this kind of kid is. I feel like this is what Trey McBride could potentially be. It's kind of like a forecasting of what his talent looks like. And I would be very comfortable taking him there. If you're trying to dig a little deeper, I mean, there's guys to like there on day 2. There's guys like a Cade Otton from Washington, potentially, maybe a Josh Wiley from Cincinnati. Some people really like Jalen Watermeyer. I'm a little bit lower, but you have guys like Cole Turner from Nevada. And then moving into day 3, you have a lot of interesting players. One guy is like Grant Calcaterra from SMU, of course, started his career at Oklahoma. Now he's more of a flex kind of, he's going to play in the slot more than he's probably going to play in line, but he brings a potentially dynamic element to the passing game. So if we're targeting guys day 2, day 3, second round through 7th, there's a lot of guys to like, but first round is definitely not the definitely not the recipe for success in this year's draft anyway.
Okay, well, still, I'll take him quite frankly in any round, and to hear it on day two, where the Jets will have a variety of selections, that should be pretty tasty. Now, Ryan, since you're the first draft analyst kind of on this series to kick it off, we will only keep this in the top 2 rounds. The Jets have 4 picks in the top 38, and what I want you to do is I want you to mock. We'll go pick by pick here for the Jets, and you mock who you believe is a good fit, could be in that range, make sense with them, and you could give some brief explanation to your pick. And like I said, every analyst that joins us here on these mock draft Mondays, from this Monday all the way through the draft, will do a quick bit of making sure that they share what mock draft picks they like. And again, I'm sure fans will share their reactions on Twitter one way or another. They'll either love or hate you based on what you're going to do. So with that being said, let's start off with the number 4 overall pick. This is the Jets that they earned with that nice 4-13 record. So what are they going to do with it? 4th overall. Where do they go, Ryan?
I in the mock draft I did earlier, I gave them Kyle Hamilton. And I guess that's no surprise after what I've kind of been talking about. But I think that the Jets, like you said before, are in a situation where there's holes at defensive end, there's hole at corner, there's hole at safety, there's hole in the offensive line, there's wide receiver. Like, there is a plethora of ways that people could go here, and especially in mock drafts. And I'm of the opinion, when you have that many holes, and obviously this is, without forecasting what free agency is going to look like, you fill it with the best player available. I think that that's a very easy way kind of to think about it. So I gave him Kyle Hamilton, potential game changer, can help improve a pass rush just by his presence, ability to make up for mistakes, can make up for cornerbacks' mistakes, can make your cornerbacks, can make your defensive line better just for his presence in the back, on the back 7, the back 4, I should say. So Kyle Hamilton was my selection for the 4th overall pick.
All right, beautiful. And again, that's an astute observation by Ryan. And that, to me, what makes it really fun. Right now, we're in the pre-free agency phase of these mock drafts. And obviously, post-free agency, a lot of that movement will dictate what new needs the Jets have or lesser needs, and the priority list will certainly shift. So the mock draft Ryan is giving us right now will certainly change to the mock drafts we receive both in mid to late March and also in early April as well. So that is very important to note. Let's go to the 10th overall pick. The Jets got this thanks to the Jamal Adams deal. It's the last pick as part of that combination, and Seattle for the first time, talk about great timing by Joe Douglas. For the first time in the Russell Wilson era, they had a losing record, and the Jets just happened on their first round pick when that happened. So 10th overall, where do they go here? Very interesting spot here, Ryan.
So unfortunately, I would have loved to get one of the offensive tackles. Ika Mekwonu was off the board when I made this pick. Charles Cross from Mississippi State was also off the board. So I went to defensive end here. I went David Ojabo. George Kalafdis was also off the board. Ojabo, for me, if you told me, well, maybe not quite to that extent. If you told me that he was rivaling the opinions in NFL evaluators' minds between Hutchinson or Ojabo when draft time comes around, I would not call you crazy, because I think that when you're looking at an athletic specimen, that's what Ojabo is. I mean, this kid, I'm a New Jersey guy. He's from Blair Academy in New Jersey, which is where Owe came out of a couple years from Penn State. And he is same type of profile, right around 6'5", 250, 255 pounds. Ran like 10.8, 10.9 in the 100 meters at that size. I mean, obviously he was a little lighter, but he's going to run somewhere in the 4.4s at 250 something pounds, which is just absurd. And he had double-digit sacks in his first year as a full-time starter. Sky is the limit. I think there's more nuance to his hands for a first-year starter than you would really expect. So I gave him David Ojabo to help with the pass rush. Obviously, defensive end is a paramount position. Pass rush is huge in the NFL, and I think that getting a guy like Ojabo there, pick 10, could end up being a bargain long-term.
By the way, that would be historic. Joe Douglas, in all his drafting so far, has only gone offense. He went Mekhi Becton in the first round. In the second round, he went Denzel Mims. Hasn't worked out as well. And then this past year, you had Zach Wilson, Elijah Vera Tucker, and Elijah Moore. He has yet to take a defensive player in the first 2 rounds of his tenure. I do think it is time for a changing of the narrative. Let's jump over to the second round, Ryan, where we'll finish it off. The Jets have 2 second-round picks, their own 35th overall and 38th overall, thanks to the Carolina Panthers. We'll get to that one in a second. Let's start at 35 overall. Where did the Jets go from here after going defense in round 1?
I was toying with running back. I know they just drafted Michael Carter, but I was toying with maybe a little bit of a bigger compliment to him. But I ended up going cornerback because I really do think I really liked Bryce Hall coming out of Virginia, and I think that he's done a lot of good things, obviously this season, a little bit of last season down the stretch. So I like him as a cornerback. I think that he's more a cornerback 2, like if he's a really good cornerback 2 potentially. So I went Darian Kendrick from Georgia, of course, was the Clemson transfer. There's some question to answer with why that relationship ended there in Clemson. There's kind of been a lot of things that have been thrown out. So I think that he is a guy that's had first round level tape this year, but I think that he could be a guy that is realistically in this range just because he has some questions to answer off the field potentially. But we're talking about a guy that both at Clemson and Georgia, he's been asked to do a lot of different assignments from zone coverage to man coverage, working off, working press. Very improved technique this season, and he's always been a really good athlete. He was a 4-star wide receiver originally at Clemson that made the transition to corner. So I think getting him opposite of Bryce Hall could be a makings of a very good and very improved cornerback room for the Jets.
I completely concur, by the way. I think I love Bryce Hall coming out of the draft, and unfortunate college injuries had him drop. But I think he is an ideal number 2. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. And then you go get your number 1 on the other side. I think that could be a great combination pair. And then the other pick we're going to make you do is 38th overall. Again, this is thanks to the Sam Darnold trade. Thank you very much for 38th overall. And again, a very high pick in the second round. Again, to me, I consider these first-round picks. What do they do with this one, Ryan?
I went Sean Ryan, offensive tackle from UCLA. I wanted to go offensive tackle with that 10th overall selection. I will be completely honest about this one. I am higher, it seems, than Sean Ryan on most people, and I'll be okay with that because I think when everything's said and done, I don't want to say I'll look smart, but I think that it'll be a good take when all is said and done because I just don't understand what people are missing with him. I don't know if people have kind of taken the chance to really watch him in depth yet because he is a guy that hasn't declared for the draft just yet, but I think that he definitely could because when you take a look at him, I mean, he kind of hits all the thresholds. He's 6'4", 6'5". I think his length is adequate. I don't think he has 34 and a half, 35-inch arms, but I think it'll be 33 and a half, 34, and everything will be fine there. And he is one of the better athletes, I think, at the position. He was a 64-plus foot shot putter coming out of high school, and I think that athleticism, the flexibility, and the power really translates both in the run and pass game. I think he's got really good balance, incredible power in his lower half. So I think that this kid is a potential because most of these left tackle, I mean, like I was toying with if Charles Cross was on the board to be the selection, but Charles Cross has only played left tackle in his career. You moving Mekhi Becton over to right, which he did do some at Louisville, but like I don't like moving really good players to opposite positions. Like usually you want to fill the other slot and find guys that can fill it. I think Sean Ryan with his profile though could play right tackle. He could play inside at guard. For me, he's a best 5 on the field type of dude because I think that he can play a variety of positions, left tackle, left guard, right tackle. I think he can play 4 different spots and he's the ultimate guy to literally get one of your best 5 on the field.
Ryan, I love the haul. I think it's great. First off, leading defense, which quite frankly, the Jets were ranked basically 32nd in every major defensive category, so they could certainly use the help. And I'm sure Robert Sala's giving you a nice little fist bump on the side for helping a brother out here on this first mock draft Monday. Ryan, I can't thank you enough. This is tremendous. My birthday is April 26th. It's right there on the draft and has been forever. So I don't know if it's a destiny thing of why I've been so linked to the draft my entire life, or the Jets just stink. So I've always been, hey, there's the draft. There's something to kind of grab and sink my teeth into. But it's something that's very important to me, and I love it with the fans. We've got great interaction, great comments and questions and topics for the show today. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. Let all the fans know where they can find us so they can get more draft coverage throughout this entire process.
Absolutely. So it's our first cycle, obviously, at riseanddraft.com. We've had really good growth so far. Really been excited with kind of just the reviews that we've gotten so far. So you can head over at riseanddraft.com. You can follow me at Rise and Draft, as well as on the Believe Podcast Network at NFL Prospects Podcast, where we do a lot of analysis, but also interviews with a lot of top football players coming into the 2022 NFL Draft. So, Paul, really appreciate you having me on, man. This was a lot of fun, though. Really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. And again, everyone stop what you're doing and go follow him right now. He's one of the best in the business. It's a great way. I couldn't have picked a better way to kick this series off. And again, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. We got a lot more Mock Draft Monday coming. All right, thanks, everybody. And then specifically, of course, thank you, Ryan.